Who should I draft? It's the number one question that we get this time of year, and luckily for you, the doc is here to help. And I'm going to be breaking down two guys that you're going to be making a decision on in the early second round. So who should you draft? Amon-Ra St. Brown or Davante Adams? All right, so when we're comparing two players of the caliber of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Davante Adams, there's 5 categories that I'm going to be looking at when I'm comparing players. First off is the price. What's it going to cost for me to draft this guy? What's their prior production look like? What have you done for me lately? Boom bust rate. How many times are you winning me a week? How many times are you losing me a week? What's their offense's potential? Is it a running offense? Is it a passing offense? Is it an offense that prioritizes one wide receiver? These are the things that I'm looking at from the offensive perspective. And then we got to look at the red flags. Is there an injury history? Does the team hate this guy for some reason? Does he have a beef with his quarterback? These are all things that we need to be paying attention to when we're drafting fantasy football players. And finally, we have the good old-fashioned gut feeling. What's my gut telling me about what these two guys are going to do and which guy's going to produce from a fantasy perspective? All right, from a price perspective, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Davante Adams, both going in the early second round in drafts, maybe sneaking into the late first. You're not really getting much of an advantage from a price perspective by taking one over the other guy. You're probably going to be making a decision, which is why I made this video. So we're going to jump right into prior production. And I know Amon-Ra St. Brown's only been around for 2 years in the NFL, so I just decided to go back the last 2 seasons. What have you done for me lately? Amon-Ra St. Brown in 2022 had an amazing season, 146 targets, 106 catches, 6 touchdowns. He was the wide receiver 10 in points per game and 16.7 PPR points per game. So really solid option at the wide receiver position. But Davante Adams had a pretty great 2022 as well. 180 targets, 100 catches, 14 touchdowns, was the wide receiver 4 in points per game, and had 19.7 PPR points per game in fantasy last season. But if you go back 2 years, that's where you really see the difference between a rookie and an established vet. Davante Adams, 169 targets, 123 catches, 11 touchdowns, was the wide receiver 2 in points per game, and had 21.5 PPR points per game. Now, I know that Amon-Ra St. Brown really turned it on at the end of his 2021 season, so these season-long numbers aren't a great representation of what he did that year, but we'll look at him anyway. 119 targets, 90 catches, 5 touchdowns, was the wide receiver 23 in points per game, 14.2 PPR points per game in that year. So when you're looking at these two players, both of them producing at an elite level, but I'm going to give the edge in terms of what have you done for me lately to Davante Adams, because he has put together 2 straight incredible top 5 wide receiver performances. So you have to give him the advantage, even though I do think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is ascending from the wide receiver position. Let's talk about boom and bust potential. Now, from a boom week side of things, Davante Adams has the advantage. He has finished inside the top 12 wide receivers in 15 of his last 33 weeks. That's 45% boom rate versus Amon-Ra St. Brown only doing it in 10 of the last 32 weeks, which is only 31% for Amon-Ra. So slight advantage to Davante Adams. Now, from a bust perspective, Davante Adams has finished outside the top 36 in 21% of his games versus Amon-Ra St. Brown finishing in 10 of the last 32 games outside of the top 36, but with a small caveat, knowing that 8 of the 10 times he has busted over the last 2 years happened in his rookie season before he finished with top 10 performances in 5 of his last 6 games. So Amon-Ra St. Brown only busted in 2 weeks last season. Incredibly consistent, but I'm still going to give an edge in this category to the boom potential that is Davante Adams, one of the highest touchdown rates in the league. He is a win it for you week kind of wide receiver, and I have to give him an advantage when we're talking about booming because his booms are just way better than Amon-Ra St. Brown's. All right, next up, we're going to look at each player's role within their own offenses. Now, Davante Adams was an absolute stud in 2022, had the highest target share of any player on any team in 2022. He had the 5th highest yards per route run in 2022, and the team as a whole was 12th in average points scored in 22 with 23.2 points. The offense as a whole, though, is not what I would call elite. They have relied primarily on the run game, and they did slow games down, which could limit Davante Adams if they decide to run the offense again through Josh Jacobs and the run game. Now, the Lions, on the other hand, they have one of the most explosive offensives in the league, and they're also returning basically everyone and adding pieces to that offense. They were 5th in average points scored in 2022 with 26.6, and there is some speculation that this offense could be even better this year with the weapons that they have added to the team. Now, they also have the 10th easiest strength of schedule this season, so they're going to be playing some cupcake games this year against teams that are not very good, which means they could be racking up the points against bad competition. Jameson Williams is also suspended for the first 6 games of the year, and we know that Amon-Ra St. Brown, when he has no target competition, is an absolute stud. 32% target rate per route run in 2022, which was 2nd in the NFL. For this category, I'm giving Amon-Ra St. Brown the advantage because I think the Lions are going to be a much better offense overall than the Las Vegas Raiders. The next category we got to talk about is red flags, and Davante Adams has a few that I'm concerned about heading into this year. The biggest thing I'm nervous about is he going to warm up to his new quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, or is he going to hold a grudge against the team for cutting his good friend and college quarterback, Derek Carr? The other problem with Davante Adams is that he is going to turn 31 during this year. Now, I personally am not one that believes in the huge drop-off at age 30 for wide receivers, but we know at some point this production has to waver a bit for Davante Adams. Are we going to start to see him fall off from a production standpoint? And the last thing is, this team has added new target competition. The return of Hunter Renfrow, who was hurt for a large portion of last season. Another target hog in Jacoby Myers coming into the system, and the team drafted a tight end that was my number 1 tight end for this class in Michael Mayer. Do these new targets pose a problem for that monster volume that made Davante Adams such an appealing fantasy target in years prior? Now we move over to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and we don't have any concerns. At least I don't. He's young, he's healthy, no real injury concerns, and we should see him continue to ascend in an offense that is moving towards being one of the top 5 offenses in the league. This category is for sure going to Amon-Ra St. Brown because he just doesn't really have a whole lot of downside. All right, guys, it's time for the final decision and the final category. What is my gut feeling on who I would draft between Davante Adams and Amon-Ra St. Brown? And for me, Davante Adams is the clear-cut winner at this moment. I know that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a sexy pick. He's a young, up-and-coming wide receiver, but Davante Adams has proven year over year that choosing to let him fall in drafts is a mistake. He is a touchdown scorer. He is a week winner for you, and if you're drafting in the early second, you need a wide receiver 1 that could win you a week each and every week. You need an impact player, and for me, Davante Adams just is that dude. So I'm going with my gut feeling here, and I'm saying Davante Adams over Amon-Ra St. Brown in 2023. So that's it for the video, guys. It is draft guide season, and our 2023 Fantasy Headliners draft guide is the best one yet. We got hundreds of player profiles and all sorts of injury goodness from yours truly. Make sure you head over to thefantasyheadliners.com and get a copy of the draft guide. But if you're like, I don't know if I want to buy it, let me know in the comments 2 guys that you want me to compare next, and I may just be willing to give away a free copy of the draft guide. Don't tell Jake, he doesn't like it when I give away free stuff, but that's what we're gonna do. Make sure you're following the Fantasy Headliners and subscribing so that you can get all the preseason content you need to win your fantasy league.